What is up, everyone? Pastor JAMZ here, back with another review and an amazing, astounding album that we have been waiting on for so long. The fans rejoice because the king is back. Kung Fu Kenny, K-Dot, the GOAT, the legend, whatever you want to call him. Kendrick Lamar is back with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers that just released this past Friday. And we have now absorbed and digested the album for 5 days. It is now time for part 1 of the review. I'm splitting this review into 2 parts because there is so much that he gave us. A double release LP, 18 tracks, an hour and 13 minutes. I really wish I could have done a whole review earlier and doing the whole review in one video, but I just can't. I can't really get my own thoughts fully collected in entirety. But I have listened to disc 1, tracks 1 through 9 in fully. I finally collected my entire thoughts. I know how I feel about them. So this is part 1. We're going to do disc 1, half of the album, and then I'm trying my best to I also started listening to disc 2 and getting my thoughts together. We're going to do part 2 of the review on Friday or Saturday, depending on when I finally make my final decision and my final thoughts together. Anyways, Kendrick Lamar, legendary rapper, 34 years old, singer-songwriter, and from Compton, California. And enough of this. We're just going to jump right into it. Something I will say about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers Disc 1 is I expected TDE to produce this album, and they did. They're probably their best producer, Soundwave, also one of my favorite producers out there in the music industry, basically handcrafted the production for all these tracks, and I think that's amazing. You know, Soundwave always does a great job with all of his artists that he gets paired up with in the label. And it was no different, no surprise that he was going to be producing all of Kendrick's album. And for the most part, it's really different. I think Kendrick kind of goes more in more of a morale type sound, more of like a modest nature thing. Really toning it down, except for the 2 tracks, I would say United in Grief and N95. Those are the only 2 tracks, and it's crazy because they're the first 2 tracks where I think the production does go more of a heavy West Coast rap sound, and Kendrick really does go off on and does his thing. But for the other tracks, you kind of have like these beautiful instruments. You have amazing violin strings, kind of incorporating a minor orchestral sound in it, and it works out really well because the rest of the production, for the most part, is simple, yet I think it doesn't really take away. I think they did that purposefully so that the production wouldn't take away from Kendrick and his message, his own idea, and stripping away from what Kendrick wants to convey in the album. And I think that's amazing. I think that's a great job and call from Soundwave and Kendrick Lamar. Because you have, in the main industry, and I see this a lot more often, where I present, people are listening to certain music and they only listen to it for the beat. They don't even know what the artist is talking about. They could be talking about being the most depressed person ever, yet the beat is really jumpy and bombastic, and they think it's a banger. And I think it's interesting that Kendrick is going in that simple direction, yet sounds so modest and beautiful, ambient in a way, that it also helps him boost his message without really stripping away his voice in a way. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the production. It's amazing, simple, and effective. There are a couple tracks, United in Grief and N95, where it is more West Coast tradition, and it has like that hard-hitting rap sound, and production's pretty well from Soundwave, so kudos to him. I will say one thing that kind of frightened me before I came into the album was I looked at the feature list. So I'm only going to talk about the first 9 tracks. I don't know who any of these are. I don't know who Blxst is. I don't know who Amanda Reifer is. Sampha, Taylour, Paige. I know who Summer Walker is, but I never really heard her music before, and I don't know who Ghostface Killah is, honestly. But for the most part, they do provide great chemistry to the tracks that they are featured on. More of like a excuse me, more of I guess chorus vocals, background vocals, and the I would say that Taylour Paige is probably takes the cake in terms of feature, because that track is just wacko from start to finish. Uh, but artists like Amanda Reifer and Sampha, also Summer Walker on Purple Hearts, really create this allude and kind of add to that ambient sound that Kendrick's really going for, that really melancholy type sound, and I think they really work well with him. Also provides more of like a soul feel, so I think that was a great call from him. Uh, Given that they're not really implementing their own thoughts, they just elevate Kendrick's thoughts more by just providing more of like these harmonic, beautiful vocals that kind of sound a little bit of like they aren't really there. They're not really there in a physical sense. It's really strange to explain, but that's how really the album sounds like when they are part of the track. But great chemistry for them. All right, so now let's get down to the nitty gritty, the tracks themselves and Kendrick's messaging. Uh, he explores a variety of messages throughout the disc one, I would say tracks 1 through 9, and it's also interesting to me that how in the Heart Part 5 he embodies various personas. He embodies various Black African American figures, popular African American figures in his life throughout the lifetime that he kind of maybe admires. Maybe he is represents their struggles, kind of connecting with them in some way, shape, or form. And he is all of them. He is all of us. That's what he would say. So I would understand as to how he has been struggling throughout his lifetime, so many things that other people may struggle with, especially in terms of identity and kind of representing who they are as a person. Nobody's perfect, and I think that's an amazing call by Kendrick Lamar, because he has never claimed to be, and I think that in terms of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, he is trying his best to live his best life, especially with his family and his friends, the people who he has worked with, and his fellow artists. I think it's just amazing how he portrays himself in that sense, and is not afraid to admit that he has these flaws. He has struggles with white women in the track Worldwide Steppers. He has struggles with his father, Father Time. He has grieved and endowed himself in grieving with money, and he even has kind of like a really strange take on relationships, modern relationships, and toxic relationships, how they're becoming more relevant each coming year, each decade that goes by. Toxicity in relationships goes both ways, and the track We Cry Together with Taylour Paige, where essentially Kendrick and Taylour Paige are going back and forth. They're a couple, and they call each other's flaws out, and they even go out of really getting those low blows, like calling out Kendrick's family, calling out Kendrick's mother, um, and then Kendrick kind of being in her way and taking away her car keys and saying that she's gonna walk to work, whatever the case may be. And then, I mean, it's just a really crazy track that where in the end they kind of make up, and it's really strange in a way, because you as a listener kind of have that sense that they're in the cycle. It's just gonna keep on happening again and again. And it's crazy to think how he really sits down and can explain all of these messages track after track after track. There's just, and it really alludes to the main message that he is everyone. He is all of us. And, he's just a human being, and he goes through things just like any other person. My final thoughts before I close out the first part of this review is I just think that Kendrick Lamar finally expresses his whole self, things that he has been keeping inside of him this whole time, even with the past albums that he has been releasing, such as To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn. He is now just letting it all out, and I think it's beautiful in a way that he finally gets a chance to express everything that he's been going through, things that mostly everyone kind of goes through at some time in their life. And I think it's just it's crazy, crazy and beautiful. I think he really establishes himself as one of the greatest rapper of all time, because you don't really hear this a lot. And something that I really stuck with me through track 1 through 9 is you hear these tap dances, and the woman even mentions stop tap dancing around the conversation. I think he wants to encourage other artists and other people in general to come up and talk to someone what the things that they've been going through, and I think that's truly amazing from an artist's perspective. And, he's just a human being. He's not perfect. He is just living his best life, trying to live his best life with his family, his friends, and his fellow artists. That is the end of the part 1 review. I am not going to give it an official score. That score will be given in part 2. That will come on Friday or Saturday. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you share with a friend, subscribe, peace, and stay safe.